Everyone has dignity and value as a human being.
Being different can't be the reason for discrimination.
Understanding the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. What are the rights of persons with disabilities?
Do you know how many persons with disabilities are in Korea? There are more than 2.5 million persons with disabilities. This is roughly 5% of the total population, equal to one family out of 6 families. When we look at the causes of disabilities, 73.3% of the disabilities are acquired during the person's lifetime, meaning that no one is free from getting disabilities. However, many persons with disabilities experience inequality, violation of their dignity, and difficulties for their autonomy to be recognized, often being discouraged when facing the harsh reality. For some people, using the bus and subway to meet a friend could be a difficult task. Imagine a situation where you meet your friend in a basement floor that has no elevator, or in a building that has no braille blocks. Persons with disabilities encounter countless obstacles in their daily lives. Then, should the persons with disabilities be helped and protected by others? Of course not. We must understand that we all have the same rights as the members of society, helping each other in harmony. Through this lecture, I hope that you will further understand and think about disabilities, persons with disabilities, and their rights.
In this lecture, we will get to learn about what is disability, understanding disability, and respecting disability. What is disability? Hello, good to meet you. Let us learn about the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities together. The UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities is called as the UN CRPD in short.
Ah, the UN CRPD. Okay, I will remember it. It feels like it would be difficult to learn about the convention, but I will try my best to follow through its contents, as it is the agreement for the valuable rights of persons with disabilities.
That's the spirit. Then, shall we get started?
Yes, please.
Before we get into the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, let's first understand who the persons with disabilities are. What comes to your mind when you hear the persons with disabilities?
Well, the word persons with disabilities makes me think of wheelchairs, prosthetic legs, or tools like the white walking stick that person with visual impairment use.
They are mostly related to physical disabilities. Note, however, that disabilities not only include physical disabilities, but also mental disabilities. In Korea, a person with a disability is defined as a person whose daily life or social activity is substantially hampered by physical or mental disability over a long period of time, in the Act on Welfare of Persons with Disabilities.
Oh, I see. Then do other countries also define a person with a disability same as Korea?
No, that is not true. It is slightly different to define the persons with disabilities by countries as they have their own policies, culture, and ways to see persons with disabilities. Shall we look at the examples of Japan and the US? First of all, in the case of Japan, the Basic Act for Persons with Disabilities defines a person with a disability as a person with a physical disability, an intellectual disability, and a mental disability, who is in a state of facing substantial limitations in their continuous daily life or social life. In the U.S., A person with a disability is defined as the one who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, and who has a record of such an impairment or is regarded as having such an impairment under the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Although the expressions are slightly different by countries, they have similarities that the persons with disabilities are seen as the one who experiences limitations in daily lives out of physical or mental disabilities.
Yes, you are right. There are similarities, but how a person with a disability should be defined differs from country to country, and it is also defined differently even in one country depending on the act.
You've mentioned before that a person with a disability is a person with a physical or mental disability. Then, does it mean that the types of disabilities can also be classified into physical and mental disabilities?
That's correct. Do you know how many types of disabilities are classified in Korea? A total of 15 types.
15 types? There are more types of disabilities than I thought.
Then, shall we find out the 15 types of disabilities quickly? First of all, physical disability is divided into disability of external bodily functions and disability of internal organs. Disability of external bodily functions consists of 6 types, including physical disability, brain dysfunction, visual disability, hearing disability, language disability, and facial disability. Internal organ disability comprises 6 types including kidney, heart, liver, respiratory, intestinal, and urinary fistula, and epilepsy disability. For mental disability, there are intellectual disability, autism, and mental disability.
I see. There are some types that I was not aware of.
I see. However, these kinds of disabilities nowadays are being changed into measuring its difficulties of social functioning. Moreover, every country has its own way to classify disabilities. Did you know that?
You mean that there are differences in classifying the types of disabilities as the definitions are? Please tell me more.
There are some countries include some types of disabilities, whereas Korea does not. First of all, in the U.S., cancer, AIDS, alcohol addiction, and learning disability are included in the types of disability. These are not disabilities by itself, but rather cases where people experience difficulties in basic social functions, such as movement, relationship, and communication due to cancer, AIDS, etc., are regarded as disabilities. And in Australia, diabetes are included in internal organ disability. Next, in Sweden, there are interesting things to see in the types of disabilities. Sweden classifies immigrants who experience difficulties in communication as a social disability.
Oh, so immigrants are regarded as a group of people with considerable limitations in daily lives, as they have hard time in communicating and are unaware of culture and institutions of Sweden.
In Sweden, disabilities are seen as disability of body structure and function, and problems regarding social discrimination, exclusion, and suppression. Therefore, keep in mind that disabilities can be divided into various types, and that it is slightly different from country to country. And these differences are related to the perspective on how people see disability, which is what we will learn from now on. Understanding disability. Can you tell me the similarities and differences of these 3 icons?
Let me see. The similarity is that all 3 icons depict a person on a wheelchair. And the difference is, the arm position is all different.
That's right. The first icon looks somehow passive. It seems like someone should push the wheelchair. The second icon shows a person moving its own wheelchair, which looks more active than the first one. The third icon looks a lot more dynamic than the rest, right?
Yeah, the third icon looks like the wheelchair will race ahead.
You are right. Just like the person in the icon, social awareness on viewing persons with disabilities are changing over time. In the past, disabilities was regarded as an object of charity. Charity means helping out others out of pity. Just like the definition, a person with a disability was considered to be poor or a person in need.
I think that's true. Persons with disabilities from TV series or movies I've seen before were always in poverty or adversity and overcame their disabilities by the help of other people.
That's true. Another viewpoint is that disability was regarded as a problem, flaw, and abnormality that needs to be fixed.
In the past, many people believed that a disability was attributable to an individual's physical and/or mental problem. However, we no longer stick to these perspectives and now understand disability as a social model.
A social model? What is that?
Simply put, a social model is a perspective of thinking that disabilities occurs from the social environment. Here, the social environment includes system, facilities, prejudice, and even discrimination. Persons with disabilities should work, enjoy cultural life, and travel just like persons without disabilities. But if the society cannot create such an environment, they will feel disabled. Therefore, in the perspective of a social model, disabilities are not something that can be overcome by the individual treatment or effort, but through a suitable social environment provided by the society and government.
I see. If persons with disabilities get support they need, and if system is well prepared as well, they will live a more proactive and independent life from being someone in need.
That's right. I wish we'd take this moment to reflect on how we have been treating persons with disabilities and think whether we have regarded disability as a personal problem only. Additionally, I want to tell you one more thing. Do you know how people in the Joseon dynasty treated persons with disabilities?
In Joseon Dynasty? I'm not sure, but since discrimination was prevalent based on social status back then, I think people viewed persons with disabilities unfavorably. Am I right?
That's not true at all. Want to know the answer? They've viewed persons with disabilities are nothing more or less than those with physical inconveniences. They have considered disability as what it is, and not as a problem, something bad, or someone that needs help.
Oh, I was completely wrong. It's a simple statement, but I think it contains deeper meaning.
I agree. I think we should learn from our ancestors' progressive thoughts.
Here's a short quiz. What cannot be seen as a changed perspective on disability? A. Disability is caused by the social environment. B. Disability is an individual's physical and/or mental problem. What is your answer? From an individual perspective, a disability was considered as an individual's problem. Today, the perspective has changed to the belief that a disability is caused by the social environment.
Respecting disability.
I often hear the term human rights from news or TV shows, but I've never seriously thought about what human rights are. Human rights. Is it the rights that belong to a human being?
Yes. Human rights means a basic right that is believed to belong justifiably to every person. In order to have human rights, nothing else is required other than being a human. Just to be born in this world, just born in this world as a human, just born in this world as a human being. Human rights are given equally to each and every single one. Let's think about human rights as a house. How should this house be?
If human rights were a house, anyone should be able to come in, right? There is no owner or guests, and nobody has the right to say, "You cannot come in." It should be an enormous house where anyone can come in and have a seat.
Well put. But if we look back in the history of humanity, some people were not able to get into the house of human rights. They were separated, isolated, discriminated, and abused from the society, and sometimes they were even killed.
I know well about the painful history. People were oppressed for having different skin color, gender, religion, etc., and for being as a particular ethnicity.
Persons with disabilities were not an exception. There still are cases of abuse, violence, bullying, and exploitation around the world, just because of being a person with a disability. Even today, many persons with disabilities are experiencing inequality from employment, education, etc., and also damage in their dignity due to violence, abuse, prejudice, etc. Additionally, there is also a problem of not acknowledging their autonomy as some live in a facility, regardless of their will.
I feel really bad. Regardless of having disability or not, we all have equal human rights. We should all receive education equally, work equally, and be able to go wherever we want.
You are right. Due to the need to specifically guarantee the human rights and dignity of all persons with disabilities from all around the world, the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities was made. Shall we take a look at the purpose stated in the Article 1 of this convention? The purpose of the present convention is to promote, protect, and ensure the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms by all persons with disabilities, and to promote respect for their inherent dignity.
Oh, I see. I think this is a valuable convention, not only for persons with disabilities, but for all of us. I have a question, though. Is the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities the only convention to ensure the human rights of persons with disabilities?
Of course not. Let's go back to the past for a moment and see what kinds of movements there were in order to ensure the rights of persons with disabilities, shall we? The history of human rights of persons with disabilities. I'll begin with the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted by the UN General Assembly on December 10, 1948. Starting with this declaration, people started to think about the human rights.
Why is that?
The Universal Declaration of Human Rights emphasized that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. It stated that everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration, without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status.
Wait, I don't see anything about disability.
You are right. That's because disability was not considered as a matter of human rights. The idea of human rights for persons with disabilities did not exist until the beginning of the 1970s. In 1975, in order to protect and respect the rights of persons with disabilities, the UN Declaration of the Rights of Disabled Persons was adopted. The declaration stated that disabled persons have the inherent right to respect for their human dignity, and furthermore stated that they have the equal human rights just like persons without disabilities, and have rights to education, services, medical and legal aid. Because on this, the importance of human rights of the persons with disabilities spread widely.
So it can be seen as the first declaration for all persons with disabilities, right? Then, did these kinds of movements started to occur more afterwards?
Yes, you are correct. Later on, the UN proclaimed the year 1981 as the International Year of Disabled Persons, and called for a plan of action at the national, regional, and international levels.
Furthermore, from 1992, every 3rd of December was designated as the International Day of Persons with Disabilities to promote understanding of persons with disabilities and mobilize support for the welfare and rights of persons with disabilities from all around the world.
Interesting. Doesn't Korea also have a Day of Persons with Disabilities? What are the efforts made in Korea for the human rights of persons with disabilities?
Korea designated every 20th of April as the Day of Persons with Disabilities, and on June the same year, the Act on Welfare of the Mentally and Physically Disabled was enacted, which can be considered as the first act for the persons with disabilities. It is currently known as the Act on Welfare of Persons with Disabilities. From 1991, the Day of Persons with Disabilities was designated as a national commemoration day, and in 1998, the Charter of Human Rights for Persons with Disabilities was proclaimed.
I see. Various efforts and movements were made in the past. Then, how is the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities that we are going to learn different from other conventions?
The UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities was adopted by the UN General Assembly on December 13, 2006, and it is the first international human rights treaty of the 21st century. It was a convention that the first to suggest that persons with disabilities are not only the objects of charity, but also subjects whose rights must be guaranteed equally.
Through the convention that protects the rights of persons with disabilities, I wish there would be less and less cases where persons with disabilities experience unfairness and that their rights are not guaranteed.
I agree. If we all work for the compliance of the convention, I believe that one day we will live in such a world. What are the rights of persons with disabilities? Let's summarize what we have learned. In Korea, a person with a disability is defined as a person whose daily life or social activity is substantially hampered by physical or mental disability over a long period of time. In the Act on Welfare of Persons with Disabilities, disability is defined slightly different according to the culture, society, and policies of each country. In the past, disability was considered as an individual's physical and/or mental problem, but today it is understood based on the perspective of social model. From being regarded as passive subjects, persons with disabilities started to be recognized as proactive and independent individuals. As the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities was adopted, more people started to view persons with disabilities as persons with equal rights to all other people. Changes such as adopting the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UN Declaration on the Rights of Disabled Person, UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and enactment of laws for persons with disabilities around the world lead to promoting awareness of global citizens.